Hi! So today I want to talk about Turner syndrome and how it affects someone living with it. And I also felt like I need to go a bit more in depth about what it actually means and what it is. So let's go. So Turner syndrome basically is a syndrome in which you miss a female X chromosome. You have the two X chromosomes, and in total you have 46 pairs of chromosomes. So you would either miss an entire X chromosome or you would miss half of it. And if you have the entire X chromosome which is missing from that sort of pair, then you would call it the standard version of Turner. So it would just be the regular sort of version of Turner syndrome. And if you miss half of it, then it's called mosaic. So you have a sort of milder form of the syndrome. I also want to tell you guys that for every single person, this is different. We all look and act and behave very differently from one another. Having a syndrome does not mean that you all act, look, think, and say the same things. I have seen this happening with Down syndrome, people with Down syndrome as well, where people think that all people with Down syndrome look the same and act the same, when in reality, these syndromes are very diverse, and the people inside of it are also very diverse, just like people who do not have a particular syndrome or disability. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. People suffer from different sort of symptoms. People have different health issues. People have different experiences with it. So I just want you guys to know that I'm talking from my perspective, and I want you to keep in mind that there are also things that I myself do not know about, even if I have the syndrome myself. Yes, that sounds weird, but if they are things that I haven't personally had to deal with, then it doesn't apply to me, and I don't know anything about it. I think that only makes sense to say. So, like I said before, you can miss either an entire X chromosome or you can miss half. And the thing is, your body with the syndrome, it doesn't produce the growth hormone which you are supposed to make during youth, basically during youth and your puberty, stuff like that. You have this often awkward phase in which the proportions of someone's body aren't fully developed yet. So you have this really awkward looking lanky person, or you still have someone who's like very small, who has yet to have their growth spurt. And then they go from like 1.70 meters to almost 2 meters in like a few months. And they experience this huge growth spurt, like this curve that you can have in puberty, or even after, because that also happens to some people. So your body is supposed to tell you when to produce this hormone, and then your hormone naturally gets reduced on its own by your body. So there's this part in your brain which tells the rest of your body, hey, guys, do something, create this. And my body, as someone with Turner syndrome, my brain was telling the rest of my body to create this. But that didn't happen because we can't create it on our own. which also leads to the fact that we aren't that tall. I myself, I am 5'3", which is 1.60 meters. So that just is kind of difficult, you know. We had to inject this hormone by ourselves. You can do this with a normal injection needle, or you can do it with a sort of high pressure pen, which you click, and then the growth hormone gets inserted inside of your body, so to speak. I myself prefer not using needle, despite the fact that I have tattoos, because I just don't like the feeling of it, and also you would have to dispose of the needle every single time you use it, which is also just not practical in a sense. So for me, that high pressure pen, which I also talked about in my previous video, that was just the best for me, to be very honest. And then also another hormone which our body doesn't produce on our own is the female estrogen hormone. So only females, to call it like that, biological females who were born with this, they are not able to produce this hormone either on its own. In puberty, you're supposed to produce estrogen, and this makes sure that you get into puberty and that you start to have these sort of trademarks for you to look like a woman. So the growth of your bosom, so hair growing everywhere, yeah, just basically the standard sort of puberty that everyone has. And we can't do that on our own, so we need to have medicines for that as well, because this hormone doesn't get produced on its own. We do not make it on our own. We need medicines for this. And then also you have progesterone. In Dutch you say progesteron. Progesterone makes sure that you get your period, that you start ovulating. We also don't make this on our own. So what I have is this sort of pill, which is a cocktail of both these hormones that make sure that this process happens on its own. And it's pretty amazing that science has gotten this far, and the pharmaceutical world has gotten this far, that this is possible. People often like to judge the pharmaceutical world or big pharma because they don't like the idea that chemicals, if you were to say it bluntly, are being put inside your body. But when I look at what the pharmaceutical world has done for me, I can only look at it in a very positive way. It has made sure that I have grown the height that I am right now, which is 5'3", 1.60 meters. Otherwise, I would have been like 20 centimeters smaller. I would have been way smaller than I am right now. It has made sure that I got into puberty. It has made sure that I can grow like a normal person and develop like a normal person, because getting into puberty is not only a physical thing, it's also something that happens inside. Your mindset, your mental development also progresses in puberty. So estrogen is not only needed for the physical aspect of it, for turning into an adult, but it's also needed for the mental aspect. And that's why it's so important for women with Turner, or people with Turner syndrome, to have this at their hands, because they need it in order to develop. And then also, if we don't get this, we will get into menopause. That's also what it's very important for. I will need to have these pills my entire life. I've also said this in a previous video, and it's just very vital that I take these pills, I use them. So that's just what I wanted to talk about today. I also saw this video recently from this guy called Dr. Mike, and he was talking about how a diagnosis can be life-changing for someone. He recalled this example from a man who came in with a foot issue, basically, and then eventually it turned out that he was suffering from cardiovascular problems, and that he basically had a heart attack, and that he had a really high blood pressure, and things were not going as they were supposed to. But just by going more in depth about something, just by looking into what patients need, or by looking into what patients are suffering from, and looking at the origins of those, you can find out what the diagnosis is. My doctor himself, he basically saw that I was extremely swollen when I was born. Now, any doctor could think, okay, every baby that's just born has very swollen hands and feet, has swollen head sometimes as well, and that's normal. But this doctor, he didn't let it sit for what it was, because he knew that it could also be a different cause, that it could also be from a different origin, and that could be because of a syndrome. He had just read into it, he had just learned about the subject. So, not only for his own sake, but also for the sake of the people who actually deal with it, my parents and I at that moment, he wanted to get a proper diagnosis and know for sure if I didn't have the syndrome. So he saw basically the physical aspects of it. He could have thought, you know, that's gonna go away, it's not that bad. This baby looks healthy, it looks normal. I mean, I was normal, I looked healthy. But the swollen part, this didn't sit right with him. And solely because of that, he went into more investigation. And that has been life-changing for me. Solely by doing a blood test. It wasn't even that much of work. Solely by doing a blood test and getting it tested in the lab and finding out about it, and basically seeing that I miss an entire female X chromosome in my DNA by conducting a blood test. Just because of this one man, he basically held my fate in his hands. If he hadn't conducted a blood test, I maybe either wouldn't have known this at all, or I would have found out way later down the line when my parents found out that I wasn't growing as I should, that I wasn't developing the way that I should have, mentally but also physically. But because of this one person, a tremendous change had been made, and I was able to live the life that I'm living right now, and have lived up to this point. So doctors can make a huge change into looking into things like this. when they see that something is off or not in the norm, that they take action. And that it's not a bad thing to follow your gut instincts, follow your intuition, and go into more depth about what is actually going on, delving deeper into who is standing in front of you. So not looking only at it as like a patient, but as an actual human being, as a person, and thinking this is important for not only that person, but also the people around them. And looking at what's best for that patient, that person. Because if he hadn't, I would never have known, or maybe, like I said, would have known way later down the line when it was too late that I have this syndrome. So if that doctor is watching this video, I don't know where he is, but if he is, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I hope that you have learned more about the Turner syndrome in this video. If you have any more questions about this, feel free to ask. I will either answer them in the comments, or I can make even more videos about what it means to have this syndrome. All right, bye.